New journal setup season is approaching, which means it's time to start thinking about what I want to include in my new setup, and I find that a very important part about planning ahead is first looking back. The two journals that I have here are my everyday journal, or my kind of like daily touch, the one that gets all of my daily task lists, weekly setups, that kind of stuff, and my yearly collections journal. This one having year-long trackers, year-long challenges, those kind of things. But before we have a look through either of these, what is important to grab out is my scribble book, because this is where we're going to be taking down all of the notes or my kind of like learnings from looking through these journals. When it comes to planning out a new setup, I like to go through my past ones, pull out all of the information about what's worked well, what hasn't really worked, and then start to look forward to what do I need in my next setup? What kind of goals do I think I'll have? What kind of projects will I be working on? And thus, what kind of things can I put into a setup so that I can be as prepared as possible? Scooting the journals out of the way, the layout that I'm setting up in the scribble book is called the want analysis, where we have W for wins, A for aversions, N for needs, and T for try. We do have a separate video on the channel that goes more in depth about this analysis, but in this video, I'm going to be showing you how I actually use it to pre-plan my setups. While I'm going to be setting mine up in the scribble book, we do also have a free template in the resource library. That one's linked in the description box below, or you can scan the QR code on screen to grab that one. Starting first with my yearly collections journal, the purple elastic on this one is just so that I can open it up and flip directly to the current year, and that's because I typically use this one year after year. This first kind of section of the journal holds 2022, 23, and 24, and then 2025 starts here. If we just get that elastic out of the way so we can have a look. When it comes to filling in my want analysis, I don't go through section by section, like just doing the W, then the A, N, and T, but more so I flip through the pages of my journals and fill in whichever section seems relevant. One of the things that I probably could have noted as an aversion before we even turned into this one is the outside of this journal is breaking. This is in part because this notebook is a little old, but also I did accidentally drop it on the floor today, and I think that that has added insult to injury, but it is something that we can note down on the want analysis. So, breaking journal. Or here I've written YCJ because that's the yearly collections journal. Bringing that more so on screen though, so that we can really have a look. At the start of this year, what I was aiming to do was a life admin gamification process, or essentially taking the different things that I wanted to do in different areas of my life and turning it into a point-based game. While I did a pretty good job of tracking it in Q1, so January through to the end of March, and also an okay job in April, in Q2 I hit a giant slump, not only with the game, but also with my journals in general, and just kind of life. So I did fall off with tracking things in here. I like the idea of it, but it isn't necessarily something I need anymore. Though I think the main aversion to write down here is the idea of annual based things. I just find that I can't keep up with things for a full year. I can keep up with them for a quarter, and you know, that 90-day period or 3 months is absolutely excellent, and it's something that I have in a lot of different planning areas for myself, like my goal setting. It aligns nicely with cyclic planning, all of that kind of thing. But annual based systems aren't really for me. Something that I really did like from this setup though was the simple decoration. That was really fun to do, and also kind of leaning into the theme with the different headers that I used, that was fun. So theme-based headers. I liked the idea of a kind of skills or level-based system when it came to my different life areas, but I think I would rather just do this as part of a level 10 life, so that could be something that I try out in my journal, and I'll note that down as a quarterly idea. I also liked having the small aspect of memory keeping with just having a kind of picture of myself here. Mainly it's just like a snapshot of me in time, so simple memory keeping. Considering the other side, this one was for my main objectives, or essentially the goals that I had for each quarter, or in this system I was calling them seasons, just to kind of lean into this life admin RPG kind of style thing. I did like having the goal summaries in here, but as I said, I don't really love annual based systems. Quarterly goal summaries though, that's a good idea. It's also good to note though, for season 3 in particular, or quarter 3, I had 24 goals or projects that I was working on. This was not sufficient space. So space, on those goal summaries. So effectively here I'm thinking maybe I want to expand that space to be a full page per quarter or something similar. Flipping over though, then the next layout I had in here were my side quests, or my 52 things I wanted to do in the 52 weeks of the year. I do like the idea of this, so the idea of 52 things, we'll put that one down. I'm gonna write that down as an idea of extended goals list, but I found that the use of that list was more of an aversion, or something that didn't really work, I didn't quite like. I just didn't really find myself checking in with it. And by not checking in, I kind of forgot what was on here. I know that some of these have been done, like obviously the ones that have been colored in, but also some others, but I didn't actively come back and check in with it. Following from that though, given that I do like the idea of it, but maybe not the execution of it, or it being like tied to an annual system, maybe something I could try is more of like a long-term bucket list. That way I still have these mini goals captured somewhere, they're just not captured in this way. After this one though, the next layout we had were deferred missions or future me problems, and I like having a capture space for future me problems, but I don't think I like having it in a paper-based system. I think I'd prefer to have it digitally, so that's also something we can write to the to try list. I think this really kind of highlights the fact that you don't just have to put one idea in one category, so I liked the idea of having a capture space, that works, but it being paper-based didn't really work. So maybe the thing I want to try is putting it digital, because I do still feel like I need to have a future me problem space. So I guess I could put that in as a need, as an FMP, future me problems, / someday maybe. Because sometimes we have those tasks that we want to do at some point, but it's just not a today or a this week or a this month kind of thing. That is what the future me problem space or deferred missions is for. In this one, I set it up as a Dutch door, so removing the top section of the page, so that then I could have two full-ish spreads dedicated to my list. Notably, I did not need all of it, or haven't thus far. But flipping on over, the next layout we have is my mastery builder, or 25 things that I wanted to do 25 times across the year. And while I like the idea of this, I don't even think I like the idea of it enough to really put it down in a wins list, because realistically, I didn't come back and check in with it. I didn't remember to do these things, or like having them on this list or on this spread didn't encourage me to do them enough to warrant having the layout, I feel. So we're gonna say 25 in 2025. It's a whole bunch of 25s. And this is a layout that I've had in my journal for quite a while. I started it back in 2021, I think, with 21 things to do 21 times. And technically speaking, I could fit a 26 in here, though 25 is pretty packed. There's only 26 dot grid boxes across this layout. But I think that moving into next year, I'm ready to let it go. One of the things that I actively tried to do this time, mainly because I was finding it hard to remember how many instances I'd done without having some kind of record of when it was accomplished or what it was, I went and put in a long series of Dutch doors here so that I could capture all 25 instances of each of these things. So the 25 days that I got 1 liter of water, the 25 days that I did 25 minutes of exercise, so on and so forth with each of the different things. And despite the fact that a chunk of these are not filled in, I know that I have done more than what I have written here. I just didn't come back and check in with it because it became kind of a pain. I liked the idea of keeping statistics on my completion percentages. I'm gonna put that in as something that I liked. So completion percentage statistics, but I could also apply that general win to a different area of my planning. It doesn't have to be for this layout specifically. Maybe I could apply that to my future me problems or something like that. I'm kind of thinking about treating my future me problems in the same way that some people treat their physical bookshelves or like their physical TBR. It's like, how many did I bring in? How many did I declutter? How many did I read? Or like in my case, do. So that's something that I can write down as a to try. Not necessarily related to the layout I'm looking at, but that's the thing. I am just kind of using going through my journal to prompt thoughts for myself. And I should probably write this thought down before I forget it. Treat future me problems similar to how Monica does her physical TBR. To anybody else reading, that might not make a lot of sense, but I know how she likes to do her system or has done it previously, so that is sufficient notage for me. After this one though, the next layout we had was dedicated to the ledger, or essentially my income tracker and my savings tracker. I like the idea of having a savings tracker, so I'll put that in wins, but I found having an income tracker was just kind of difficult because I wasn't necessarily sure how much I was going to earn in any month, which meant I kind of held held off for quite a while in putting any kind of scale in, and because my income is so varied, it really fluctuates across the year, some months being decently higher than other ones, and it not really being information that I look back on, it's more of an aversion. I think I'd rather track that one digitally as well. And possibly even savings, but the way that I treat the savings tracker is a little different to the way I treat the income tracker. That one's more so just colouring in a box as I reach that level in savings, and that one is also not up to date, so maybe it's a win because I like the idea of it and I like using it, but the actual use of it is an aversion. I would probably just say that the use of pretty much anything in my yearly collections journal has been kind of a miss this year, because we're kind of sensing a theme here. Oh, I like the idea of the layout, but I didn't get in to fill it in. And given how often that has come up already, it probably is a signal that something isn't quite working. That being said, homestead upgrades, or essentially things that we wanted to do around the house, like home-based projects, I enjoyed having that list in here. So home projects list. What I will say though is having this in a space that my partner Vogel can also access is kind of important. So maybe that home projects list could go into a digital space that we can both access. That is something I could try. So a digital home projects list. On this one though, I just recorded what the project was. I had columns to say whether it was like really important, how much was it going to cost, cross off when it was done, and also write down the date that it got completed. We haven't done all of them, but we have done a chunk, and that's progress to be proud of. Flipping over, the next one we have though is dedicated to analytics. And honestly, I don't love tracking my analytics in here anymore. I used to, and I kind of like it. I like the structure of the layout, so I guess we can say the structure of the analytics page, but having to do all the math myself, no. So manual analytics math. For that reason, I think that one also might go into a digital system, and I might also par down how many analytics I'm tracking. So maybe my need there is a simplified analytics tracking system. That was 2 spreads, so the next one we have is my past and present, or my then and again layout, which I do very much love. I love the kind of like simplified memory keeping of it, which is something that I noted earlier as being a win. So the then and again, and the way this one essentially works is that we have January 1st, December 31st, or the start and end of the use of your journal if you're doing it on a kind of journal basis, and then a bunch of prompts in the middle that I respond to at the start and the end of the year. I really enjoy this kind of like comparison-based memory keeping. I think it's a bit of fun, but I think I might move this into a different journal and possibly make it quarterly because, as we mentioned, annual-based systems aren't really working for me. So quarterly, then and again. On the other side of this one though, we have my letter to myself, which I do at the end of each year for the end of the following year, or I guess kind of the start of one year for the end of that year. So I wrote this one on like January 2nd or something like that, to be opened on December 31st. I love a letter to myself. I'm going to put that one down as a win, but given the fact that I haven't really been actively checking in with my yearly collections journal, I'm not too sure if I want to keep it for next year. While I have previously very much liked the idea of keeping those annual trackers and setting them up in here so I don't have to migrate them with each new journal, something that I've been trying different for my everyday journal is moving to a quarterly system rather than a half-year system. And that's something that I've quite enjoyed just in terms of aligning my planning better with how my mind works and how my goal setting system works and all of that. Of course, we've now looked through the yearly collections journal, so we will carefully scoot that one to the side. Gosh, this is so upsetting. And now as we've had it open and had a look through it, it is a little bit munted, just a tad. Oh dear, I might need to do some journal surgery on that. That is a future me problem, because for right now, I want to do the want analysis on my everyday journal. Now, getting into this one, I feel like I might need a new page because the wins in particular I don't have enough space for, and I do typically like to do a want analysis for the yearly collections separate to the want analysis for the everyday, but I will use the information together in order to inform how I'm going to set up next year's planners. Flipping on over though so that we can set up a new one. This one is going to get all of the same sections with roughly the same amount of space, maybe just putting the needs in the to try section a little bit lower. With that one set up, it is time to open up the little journal. This one is a B6. I love it. I love the cover more than anything. Absolutely gorgeous. But I guess, okay, wins. The journal cover, beautiful. So gorgeous journal cover. That is definitely an important thing to think about when thinking about setting up a new journal. Like, if I'm gonna pick a journal, I want it to be one that I like. Flipping open to this one of the things that I have loved from previous journals, not this one so much, is having a really nicely decorated front cover, or like, you know, nameplate page. Didn't put that in this one. So I think that's something I would like to bring back. So I guess the aversion here, or the thing that I don't like as much, is not decorating the nameplate page. That just means that when I come to set up my next journal, I know that about myself. I want to have it decorated. I want it to look nice. I did recently go and add myself a little shopping list in here, which I do quite like having that there. It's really a very temporary list. It's just on a sticky note. So temp list sticky note. After this one though, we have, first of all, this theme is gorgeous. I love it. I love this tape. I have used it multiple times for multiple setups because I love it so much. So start of journal theme. And I kind of like how this one was loosely tied to the actual journal itself. Like, it's kind of celestial. It's called Fairy's Nest, the tape, but it has a lot of stars and sparkles, and the start of the journal has stars and sparkles too, so it's kind of cute. And something that I quite liked was having not only my monthly calendars, but also a quarterly calendar. So we're gonna say quarterly and monthly. YAAG, which is like year at a glance. This isn't a full year, but I know what I mean. I also liked having decorative lettering, that was fun, and in particular decorative lettering that I didn't have to do myself because those are stickers. But flipping over, the next one we have is a quarterly overview, which I also quite liked. It's a very simplified version though. It's not like a future log where I'm going and putting every single event down here. It's just kind of the big or important things. So we'll put in simplified quarterly overview. After this one, we then have the Change Your Life Challenge, and this is where I put in a kind of like just overview of what my goals were. I really like having that. So CYL, or Change Your Life goals list. And I also liked having the project-based ones, or the ones that are kind of like one and dones, tied to particular weeks. So we can put that one in here too. Weekly schedule of CYL. Another thing that I also quite have enjoyed is just the fact that this is a B6. It's very compact and it makes every page look quite full, so that's nice. So the B6 and full pages. And then after this, we get into the layouts that are related to specific goals. So this one being all about physical health. I'm just gonna write down that I enjoyed the goal-specific collections, because that really depends on what goals I'm working on during any given quarter. I do foresee physical health being an area I continue to focus on in quarter one though, so we're going to put down as a need physical health layouts. In particular, I have really liked having my breakfast and lunch log. This is mainly for my meal prepping, and although in quarter four my meal prepping has kind of taken a bit of a shift, I'm mainly just doing the same 2 meals over and over again. I might go back to preparing different foods in the new year. Maybe, unsure yet. If I do, those will definitely be returning. But things like the exercises to try and the recipes to try, those ones are both related to specific goals that I have for quarter four. After this one, we have fun and learning, and I like having a date night log. Even though that isn't a specific focus for the current quarter, it's good to record that we are actually keeping up with our date nights. And similarly, I like my day off log because it makes me, or kind of like forces me, to be a bit more intentional about my days off and using them in a way that is cup filling. I foresee one of my needs to be another reading plan, so we're going to put that in here. I'm going to put that down as a personal curriculum though, mainly because I like the wording of it, but it's essentially just what skills do I want to build and what am I going to consume in order to build those skills. Flipping over, the next one we have is related to organization, so digital decluttering, that is a current project, recipe transfer, current project, life lists, current project, and then the future me problems. Now, notably, I haven't written anything in here, and that's because I don't think my future me problems needs to be in a physical space. Like, a digital space would be good. So FMPs in a paper planner, that one is in a version, and then to try is FMPs digitally, because I do still value having a spot to write them down. I just don't think it needs to be in my notebook. The next layout we have is for Vlogmas. Notably, I have not used that one yet, so I guess one of the aversions here is the timeliness, I suppose, of collections. I put this one in here because I'm like, oh, Vlogmas is coming, we need to write down ideas. I want to make sure I'm organized and prepared in advance, but I haven't fully planned out what I'm going to do for Vlogmas yet, so I haven't put any of that information in here, but we're also getting towards next cycle where I'm also intending on having a Vlogmas layout, so did I need to have it at the start of the journal as well? How do I word this in a way that I can put on this list though? I think I'm just going to write it out as like a full sentence. So making sure that collections don't double up or are placed in appropriate spots, because information duplication is always something I'm kind of on the lookout for. It's not something that I need in my journal. I'd rather just have it be in one spot and me know that it is there and go and check in with that spot. That is better for me. But the next layout we have is my new journal plan. So essentially a place to write out my wins, aversions, needs, and to try. I haven't used it thus far, and I think it's in part because I enjoy being kind of messy with this, and this layout looks too nice to be messy with. So I guess we're gonna have Nujo planning in a space that is too neat. I also like to be able to have my notepad on the side and like flip through my layouts, which I don't want to, flip through the start of this journal and be like, oop, gotta go back here to write a thing in. Now go back here to have a look at it. Oh, here's another idea, and now I'll go back. It's a lot easier having it in a separate notebook just to the side. Sometimes what I'll also do, alongside flipping through like my current everyday journal and my yearly collections journal, is also consider my other journals that I've used recently and whether I have any information to pull out from them. For instance, we have my last quarterly journal, or the journal I used for quarter 3. Is there any information that I can learn from this one? And the journal that I had at the start of the year for the first 6 months of the year. For the most part, I don't think there's going to be a lot to take away from these, so I'll just do a kind of quick flip through. Some of it I've already jotted down, like the idea of the sticky note and such, decorating this front nameplate. In this one in particular, I also put in a little pocket. I don't feel the need to write anything about that because it's not really something I feel like I'm missing out on right now, but it is something I could bring back if, page space permits. In particular, I ended up taking it out because while I did like the fact that I had a storage spot, I didn't really come back and pull the stuff that I was storing out of here, so it didn't seem super necessary. But we've got a timeline view, future log, don't really need that anymore, stuff related to the gamification that I don't need to jot down about. But most of the things that I would address from these layouts, any needs or things to change and stuff like that, I already made those adjustments in moving into my next journals. So the one that has the daisies on it being the one that directly followed this, and then the one that we just looked through in full. While going through the journals is a great place to start for the want analysis, what we can also do is just some general brainstorming, especially in the areas of needs and to try. Because the needs is like future focused, kind of predicting what's going to be necessary, sitting there and really thinking about what you have coming up for the next period is a good place to start with this. So if I'm doing another yearly collections journal setup, what's something that I think I'm going to want for the entire of next year? If I'm doing another quarterly setup, what kind of things do I have going on in quarter 1 that are going to be helpful for me to have something set up in my journal for? For instance, I know that I'm going to be going away in quarter 1. We're going to Korea, so I'll probably want to have a packing list or a preparations list or something like that. Another need I have is something for reset week. I love doing a really kind of proper clean slate, fresh start type thing at the end of each quarter in preparation for the next one. So having something in there for resetting tasks, that'd be good. Coming back to the idea that we're going away for a period of time, I also want to make sure that my start of journal stuff is easy to fill in while I'm away. So easy to fill in layouts. Another way that you can add to your needs and to try section in particular is considering each of your different life areas and what kind of needs you might have for that, what kind of things you can put into your new setup that might assist you. Going through my life areas, which might be a little different to yours, but hopefully you can use them as some inspiration. I have physical health, that is a big one. So as noted, physical health layouts is something that could be useful. And one of the things that I kind of want to try is a continued don't break the chain in terms of my exercise, but putting an exercise tracker in my everyday journal. Currently I have that one in a separate notebook and I don't actively track in with it as often as I would like to, so having it in the everyday journal would probably be a good idea. Another life area I have is mental health. So is there anything that I can do in terms of like brain decluttering or mind unwinding? any kind of stresses that I have in my life that I could make a collection about that would help me kind of mitigate that or lessen it. Maybe you want to try setting up a trigger or spark list, which is a list of prompts that you can use to help trigger or prompt yourself in order to get things out of your head. I don't necessarily need one in my new journal setup, but it is something that I'm going to be putting in my digital space in Notion. Another area I have is personal development. That one's kind of taken care of in terms of my personal curriculum. And then another one is home environment. That one is more so taken care of in that home projects list that we mentioned before when we were looking at the yearly collections journal. The fifth area I have is finances, so including things like budgeting layouts, expense trackers, savings, income, that kind of stuff. I'll be doing the majority of that in a digital space as well, so no need to add anything to the list. But then another area I have is fun and leisure, and I think that having something dedicated to either exploring new types of creativity or leisure or like gaming or something, that would be cool to have in my journal. So maybe some kind of like hobby time layout. The way I'm kind of thinking of it at the moment is essentially a bunch of columns that have the different types of hobbies that I like to enjoy, like reading, gaming, whatever else. And then every time I partake in that, maybe adding a little counter to it in terms of like coloring something in, because this is going to be in my journal. So a hobby time layout or tracker. The next category though is work. The majority of my work related stuff is either going to be in the form of task lists or over on Notion, but something that I feel like I kind of need is a weekly structure for what my content releases for each week are. So weekly content releases. Those aren't necessarily going to be captured in my starter journal setup, but I like to reward my brain for having the thought and putting it down on the list. Just because we're adding things to these different sections doesn't mean that every single one of them is going to be translated into something for the new journal setup. We just want to make sure we're capturing the thoughts so that we can use them to make informed decisions. The next life area I have though is partner, or for me that's Vogel, which I've already got our date night login here, so I don't think I need to add anything else. And then the next category would be social, which it might be good to have another social time tracker in my journal, just to make sure that I'm maintaining contact with my friends. So social tracker. That one isn't so much a try because it is something I've already used before, but it is something I foresee possibly needing. Similar idea for the next category, I might also want to have some kind of family time tracker because my next category is family. Just running through those categories again, I have physical health, mental health, personal development, home environment, finances, fun and leisure, work, partner, social, and family. 10 different categories, which I could then do a level 10 life for if I wanted to. I like the idea of a 10 by 10. Of course, you could also have other categories like spirituality or giving and contributions. Maybe you like to split your social stuff differently. I split that into social in terms of friends, social in terms of family, and social in terms of partner. But you could also just have them all together as social. But I find just organizing my thinking in that way, going through each of those categories, considering how they have been served or like have a space in my journal setup, is just a helpful way for me to think about it. Once I've got all my ideas out on paper though, then it's time to start thinking about how I can translate these into pages or layouts or collections. That's also in part why I put bullets at the start of each of these, because then as I do something with them, I can cross them off. But if we open this one up, we're going to write the page list over here, making sure that we also go and check in with that other list that we had before. So this will be my 2026 setup page list. Now, not everything that we have on here is actually related to a specific page. For instance, the first one is a gorgeous journal cover. So picking my journal, let's make sure it's gorgeous. I don't necessarily need to add anything to this list for that, but it is something to keep in mind. What I will usually do at this stage is not so much try and perfectly sequence the pages. That isn't the purpose right now. I just want to get a list of what pages I'm going to set up or I'm musing with setting up, and then I can sequence them and order them appropriately once I have the full list. So the first one that we have in here related to an actual page setup is the quarterly and monthly year at a glance. So we can cross that one off and write down that we're going to be doing a quarterly year at a glance that features monthly calendars. Another page idea we have from this one is the change your life goals list. That's one that I've enjoyed, so we can put that one down. And we also had the weekly schedule of when those goals were going to get done. So a quarterly goal schedule. And in brackets we'll say broken down by week. It's good to be specific here, especially when it relates to things that you enjoyed. We want to make sure that actually happens when we set the layout up. We also want to have some goal-specific collections, which very much depends on what goals I'm going to be working on. So goal-specific collections. And given how many goals I had this time around, I'm just going to add a couple of nested bullet points that I can use to add in those ideas as I collect them. Mainly just for some light organization in this list. I also liked the idea of having my date night log and my day off log, crossing both of those off. And then we can move over to the aversions. Now, one of my aversions was not decorating the nameplate, so we're going to put down that I want a decorative nameplate. Yes, it is a page that is already kind of pre-printed into the notebook, but the decorating of it, that is something I will put into the setup. What you may also want to do as you go through and write this list is write down a list of things you won't be including, or maybe things you're going to be including elsewhere. So for instance, for me, that would be putting the future me problems in a digital space. So maybe down in this corner, I'll just write down digital, and I'll add future me problems to here, so I know that I have acknowledged that point. I can cross it off the list. That one is also in the to try section, so we'll cross that off there too. Something that I probably don't want to include is the new journal planning space, because as said, I kind of like having it in the scribble book. I also kind of like having it outside of the journal so that I can, easily write things down on the list and not have to flip back and forth with pages. So I'm going to write down a do not include list and add new jo planning to that. New jo here stands for new journal, so we can cross that one off. In terms of the needs, physical health layouts, definitely something I want to include, and we also noted that I wanted to include an exercise tracker. So I'm going to put that one down over here, though I might actually put that one underneath goal-specific collections because honestly it is going to be related to a goal, so I might as well nest that one under there. But that isn't necessarily going to be the only physical health layout I include. I'll probably also have one related to food or something like that, so food related layouts. And then I believe that anything else I do for physical health probably won't be in the start of journal setup, it'll end up in my weeklies or like my cyclic or monthly pages, so we can cross that one off here. A personal curriculum though, we're going to put that one into goal related ones because it's related to learning, which I do have long-term goals surrounding. And then one that isn't specifically related to goals, I think, is career trip planning, so we'll put that one in down here. And I'm going to put that one in the collection of pages for the start of journal setup, mainly because it's going to happen so close to the start of when I'll be using the notebook. Kind of just makes sense to include it there, I think. The other page related ones we have on here are a social tracker and a family time tracker. We can add those to the list. And I've noted resetting tasks in here, and while that will become a layout of some description, it's not going to go in the start of journal setup, it'll go kind of towards the end. One that will be in the start of journal setup though is something related to hobby time. Of course, this wasn't the only list that we set up, we also had the one for the yearly collections journal, and I want to make sure I do a similar thing and go through each of these as well. We already accounted for the paper-based versus digital future me problems, and thus liking having a space to capture future me problems, but one that we haven't added is the then and again, especially having it in a quarterly based system, so we can flip over and add that to the list. When it comes to actioning the other items on this list though, what I'm really thinking about is, will I need a yearly collections journal next year? And if I don't, where are these things going to go? Some of them I can move into my everyday journal, I'm okay with that, like for instance the then and again. Given the fact that I'm going to be going with a quarterly based system for it, it makes sense to have in the everyday journal, but other things I'm not too sure. I think I like the idea of having a savings tracker. I could put that one in the everyday journal. We'll add that one here. Actually, we'll probably add it to goals because honestly, it'll probably be related to goals. But some of these ideas, I think they might be better for my goal planner or goals journal. So we're going to add a separate little section down the bottom here, which is going to say goals for my goal planner. And one layout that I think should go in there would be the letter to me, because my goals journal is more of a long-term journal than my everyday journal is. So letter to me. And I also thought that my 52 in 52, or the use of that one being an inversion, but the idea of it being something I liked, that one I thought I'd turn into a long-term bucket list, so maybe I add that to my goals journal. That way I still get to have it captured on paper, which I like, but I don't have to transfer it with every new everyday journal I set up. Especially if I'm going with a quarterly system where I set up a new one every 3 months. We also noted that I might go with a digital home projects list and digital analytics tracking, so we can add those to here. Analytics and home projects, making sure to cross those off in all of the relevant sections. And also thinking about some of the aversions I had here, I want to include those on the do not include section. So that being 25, 25s, or what would be 2626s, which sounds a little silly. And also the income tracker, not going to include that. And also the kind of broad category of annual-based systems, we're going to include that one on here too. So annual trackers in particular. Quarterly goal summaries is kind of already taken care of in the sense of having the Change Your Life Goals list, because that is my quarterly goal setting that I do based on the Epic Goals system. And then another thing that I noted as wanting to try was a level 10 life done quarterly, so we're going to put that one down here too. Now I do already put this into my goal journal, but I think I would like to have a more decorative version in my everyday journal. That would be kind of fun, especially with the idea of memory keeping and that kind of like slice of life snapshot. And memory keeping was also something that I've noted as being something that's a win to me. I enjoy the simple memory keeping. So maybe having a memory keeping kind of collage page or something like that could be fun. Maybe kind of like a quarter in review, or like this quarter in photos, or something along those lines. Now, having gone through those 2 pages, you can see that not everything is fully checked off. For instance, the breaking of the yearly collections journal doesn't really have something that I want to actively try and do there, outside of picking a journal that's not going to fall apart. Similar idea with the simple decoration and theme-based headers and such. I can then also pull these out as things to keep in mind or things to remember, but what I in particular want to do is pull out any of the ones that they are related to a layout, but they're not related to the start of journal setup. So we're just going to call that other layouts, with one of those being for reset week as related to the resetting tasks, one of them being related to the weekly content releases, so content releases on my weekly dashboard. And I also had the idea of having some kind of like percentage completion for my future me problems. That one could kind of be structured like the analytics page, so maybe something related to that. So future me problem completion stats. And one that I totally forgot to include was the simplified quarterly overview. We're adding that one as well, because I quite like that one and it would be quite a bummer if I forgot to include it. You can probably see from the general aesthetic of this list as to why I didn't want to include it in the very nice, pretty layout that I had in my journal. But this kind of pre-planning is so important for making sure I'm including the stuff that's actually going to be useful, not including the stuff that I don't really need anymore, and all in all just forming a system that works really well for me. Now, one of the other very important considerations when it comes to figuring out what you're going to be putting in your new journal and how you're going to be setting it up and all of that is also what journal are you going to use. I'm not 100% decided on mine yet, but I do have a couple of options. While I have been absolutely loving the B6 and how compact it is and how nicely 3 months fits in here, I have also been wanting to toy around with just a little more space. So one of the options I was considering was an A5 notebook, which also has just, oh gosh, such a pretty cover. I love the foiling. I think the cobwebs are really cute. It has silver gilded edges, which are just like, so shiny, so pretty. So that is a potential option. Or I was considering going back to a square, and I've got this one which has the snake and key design. This one came out as part of actually both of them are from a Halloween release. This one being from this year and the other one being from a previous year. But I just thought that this front cover was absolutely gorgeous, and I do love a square notebook. The edges on this one are deckled along this edge and smooth along the other, and I have used a deckled edge notebook before, so it wouldn't be particularly new, but I do think this one is really gorgeous as well. Let me know what you think. Should I go with the snake and key design, or the moon and cobweb design? Or essentially, should I go with a square or an A5? I haven't picked yet. Regardless of which one we end up going with, the setup is going to be on the channel soon, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. But I am feeling very good about this list of potential inclusions for my 2026 setup, though saying 2026 sounds really weird. Of course, we still have a bit of time until that setup gets done. I could change my mind, and in particular, I do definitely need to go and order the pages, so I know the sequence that I'm going to be putting them into the new notebook. We do of course have a video on the channel that talks through how to find your perfect page ordering, which is worth checking out. That one includes the considerations that I do anytime it comes to sequencing my pages, especially when I have a bunch of new ones that I'm including, and I want to make sure that they're ordered in the way that makes the most sense. If you wanted to know more about my process for that, then the video on screen is for you. Click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.